Hello and welcome to State of Mind Talks, the podcast series from the mental health and fitness charity State of Mind Sport. This is a series focusing on a demanding profession which at the very top level combines elite fitness, instant decision-making, immense knowledge, composure management, and a huge amount of mental toughness. I'm George Riley and this is State of Mind Talks Referees. And this week it's the season finale and we speak to a man who I hope can bring some of the strands of this series together nicely. A former elite rugby league referee himself who took charge of the biggest games in British Rugby League before retiring to work with us at State of Mind Sport. And he's back now doing a bit with the Rugby Football League as well. Ian Smith, it's a great honour. How are you, sir?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me, George.
No, I've been looking forward to having a chat. How have you been this year, your work with State of Mind, and obviously your RFL work as well again now?
Yeah. Oh, the State of Mind stuff is amazing. The feedback, the humbleness of what we're trying to do as a charity and as a group of individuals, just to try to break down the stigma that's around mental health and mental fitness. And also think it's about promoting and celebrate good mental health. We only seem to bring mental health into the equation when we're on the floor or we're feeling low and flat and possibly vulnerable. And I don't think we celebrate when we're in a good place. And, in general, when we think about physical health, we always think about an athlete. We always think about a sports person that is winning records and doing this and the other. And we celebrate physical health, but we never seem to celebrate mental health with the same gusto, if that's the right word. And like I said, as you know, George, it's about just breaking down those stigmas and trying to just say, look, sometimes we can have a bad day, and life can be full at times of bad days, but let's celebrate the good days and let's really promote what life can be like with these really good mental health days.
Yeah, you know what?
And then
That's a really good point, Ian. Right off the bat at the top, that's a really good point. It's, something much like we only do extra stretching when we're nursing an injury already. Mental health's kind of the same. It's like, I need to fix something because I'm feeling a bit dodgy, where actually we need to be proactive and be 24/7 about maintaining that.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't turn up at the start of a race without having done any training.
Well, some of us do.
And it's about well, possibly, but it's about that progression. It's about looking at the triggers, looking at our lives, ups and downs, and trying to find a good balance. I think balance to everything is wonderful. And I think sometimes we should stop being so hard on ourselves. I think sometimes when our mental health takes a little bit of a dip for whatever reason, and there's a myriad of reasons, I think we're more hard on ourselves than if we have a physical injury. If we have a physical injury, we just, that happens. We get a strain, we get a tear, we get a break. And sometimes, all right, give me 6 to 8 weeks or 3 months or whatever, and I'll be back. But with our mental health at times, when it does take a dip, I think we're harder on ourselves than we are with a breakdown in physical health. Just treat it the same. Just look at how do we mend it? What people do we have around us? There's always somebody there to help us if we put our hand up. But sometimes that's the hardest thing because the perception is that everybody can cope. Everybody's wonderful with their mental health. So why do I feel down? Why do I feel frustrated and anger because everybody else can cope? Well, that's not life. Not everybody can cope. And we just need the right people around us and do the things that help and suit us to promote and celebrate good, positive mental health.
You know what? You're so right. And we'll get on to a bit more of the mental health side of that in a bit. And the asking for help thing is spot on as well. You might just be surprised by how people react around you when you do ask for help. You're right. We don't. We'll shut it off. I always kind of visualize it like if you fall down a dark hole and you're trapped down there. There might not be people who know you're trapped down there, but there might be loads of people walking past at the top willing to help you if only they knew. So it's almost up to you to shout, let them know you're down there. Mm-hmm. And they'll be queuing up to get you out. If that's not too deep right at the start of this podcast.
No.
The theme throughout this series has been referees, of which you were one of our finest, and we'll come on to your refereeing journey and why you stepped away. As a series, on the whole, Ian, what have you made of what you've heard on this series from the mixture and the wide spectrum of our elite officials that I've invited onto this podcast. What have you made of what you've seen and heard, and why do you think we needed to do this series?
I think the sad part of it, even though they've been fantastic, George, is that every referee, instead of talking about the great things about being a referee, the places they've been to, the amazing players that they've refereed, it seems to come back to the negativity and the abuse aimed at that person and the impact that it has on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, especially now with social media. And for some reason, for some bizarre reason, people feel that as soon as you put that referee's uniform on, you're fair game. And you should accept abuse. Never accept abuse of any kind, regardless of what uniform you were. If it was so easy, then everybody'd do it. If it was such an easy job, why are we struggling to recruit referees? We're struggling to recruit because of the negativity and abuse. You know, I've listened to them work like with Chris Kendall getting the death threats of his child, and it's just so abhorrent. And I know the keyboard warriors, and I know 99.9% of it they don't mean, and 99.9% of it is aimed at the uniform. But behind the uniform, there is a real person that laughs, cries, bleeds, and screams. So where is it in our psyche of rugby league fans, which is a fantastic sport with fantastic people, where is it in their psyche that they feel that is acceptable? In no other walk of life is that acceptable. Even with parents abusing young referees, that's a childcare issue, that's a safeguarding issue. But yeah, it seems to be as soon as you put that uniform on, well, you're fair game, so you should accept it. Never, ever accept abuse.
Yeah, Robert Hicks called it the magic shirt, didn't he? Reasonable people put the shirt on or see the refs in their shirt and think it's fair game to have a go. And it's not, we should say, not just a rugby league problem, far from it. It's a sport-wide problem, it's a culture-wide problem. It's something that has just taken on a life of its own since social media became such an enormous thing. I can still remember the day that when Twitter was founded, what was it, 2008-9, and suddenly it's almost uncontrollable. So we shouldn't just criticise rugby league fans for this. It's not that at all. I'll get your experiences of that in a moment. As a wider point, then, where do you think we are? Just before we talk about your own story, where do you think we are now in terms of refereeing? That refereeing pool, which you mentioned there, which is a bit of a concern in terms of recruitment. Where are we in terms of having enough good referees to do the sport justice, Ian, do you think?
I think you've always got to evolve. You've always got to promote. You've always got to bring through. You've always got to recruit. The problem is because of the vitriol that is on social media. And you're right. It's not just rugby league where the abuse is aimed at the uniform. It's society as well. But I think a lot of people, a lot of ex-players, a lot of fans, when they see and read what is said and spouted at and about the referee, they question themselves, why would I want to do it? Why would I want to? Why would I want to put myself in that arena to be name called to the degree that I am? And that's probably 80 to 85% of the reason why people don't take up the whistle. It might even be more. It's not a lack of knowledge of the laws of the game, because you can learn that as you go. It's not about the amount of support that there is within the game to encourage you to referee, because there is. And there's so many ex-players that come out of the game and, you know, we try to get them into the refereeing pathway. No chance. Why would I want to? Why would I want to put myself in that arena? And they don't. How do we change it? Education. Just keep banging that drum. Just keep putting podcasts on about the impact and the effect. You know, as you know, when I do my talk for State of Mind, you know, I talk about the negative impact that has on the well-being of me when I reffed and the referees in general. Just that, I know it's only name calling, you know, and the old analogy, sticks and stones may break my bones type of thing. But now names with social media do have an impact, especially a lot of the younger ones coming through whose lives involved social media. It's not so bad for us old ones, and I don't mean us as in me and you, George, but us old ones who the vast majority of my career, social media wasn't around, so it didn't impact me. The name calling was to your face at the ground rather than via social media. I don't know how I'd have coped now if I'd have had the amount of abuse that some of the young lads get now.
Yeah, and on that, and you're right, it's not acceptable however way it's delivered, but at least when it's at the ground and in person, it can wash over you. For the written word on social media or in the written press, the problem is it's not just your fish and chip paper or whatever the old saying was, because it's there forever now with the internet. It's there forever unless it gets deleted, and anyone can add to it and reply underneath or reshare. So yeah, we do need to think about that. You asked at the start of that answer, Ian, why would referees do it now? So let's go back to the start with you. Why did you do it? Why did you want to be a referee?
I always played amateur rugby league for a team called Sailor Hornets, and back in the late 80s and during the night, most half of the 90s. I love being around rugby league players. I love being a rugby league player. Unfortunately, I wasn't very good and I kept getting injured. And so I was missing time off work and one thing and another. But I always knew the rules. And I always thought in my mind there will come a point at what I will take up the whistle. And then I had a really nasty rib injury. And that was the time. I was 30, which is way too old now to start out. But at the time, it seemed a really good age. I played around amateur rugby league for the best part of 12 or 13 years. So it was that time. And from doing my first game at Heywood under 14s, I just thought, oh, wow. Oh, my God. I loved it. The feeling, I've never had that feeling coming off playing, but the feeling I had coming off having put my whistle down, it was just, after the game, it was just amazing. And I just knew, because I knew it was quite a selfish thing. If I work hard, hopefully I will get the rewards. Where when you're part of a team, if not everybody's pulling in the same direction, you don't always get the desired outcome. So I knew that I could be selfish in this. I knew I could push myself as hard as I could. And I would dictate, obviously not I, the coaches, but it was up to me how hard I worked and to gain the rewards. And it just seemed to work. And I just seemed to climb and climb and climb relatively quickly.
And how long was that journey for any referees listening or watching this podcast, of which, by the way, they've been, I mean, it's been great. Every game I've been at this season, a member of the RFL officials comes and makes a comment about the podcast, which it's been fantastic that it's had that cut through. But for any of the up and coming refs, holding on to that dream that you enjoyed in that career, how long was that journey from that first under 14s to Super League? How long did that take?
Well, to become a Grade 1 referee, it took 21 months.
So pretty quick
to get me first. Yeah. And then it was about another 7 or 8 months later before I ended up doing London Broncos against Salford, refereeing Sean Edwards.
Wow.
in 1999. So it was less than 3 years from that.
Two and a half years. 2.5 years from under 14s to Sean Edwards in Sean Edwards.
Yeah. It was Steel Retchless and then your Jim Dimmock and Peter Gills and it was just like, wow. And the amazing thing was the under 14s at the open age was probably harder, but the Super League at that time was just so quick. George, it was just like, and it was the speed of thought was just, it was just, yeah, your speed of thought. Because as soon as you made a decision, everybody looked at you and you couldn't think it through. You had to do it instantaneously. And it was like multiple decisions because the ball went through the hands so quick, the side steps, the vision that these great players had. And when I come off, I was the most tiredest I'd ever been. Not physically, mentally. I was just shot to pieces because I must have made 20,000 judgments in that game. Bang, 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 bang. And I just thought, can I do this? But then the adrenaline and the high that I had driving back from London back home, it was just, I don't think I slept for 3 days, because I'm a big rugby league fan. So, got Sean Edwards next to me. And I'll tell you a little story about Alan Langer. I refereed Alan Langer one of the greats of all time when he played at Warrington. And I refereed him when Bradford Bulls played at Ballyparade, Bradford City. And it was before we had open communication. So the tens were pretty much policed by me. And I kept looking along, and Alan Langer's a little bit in front of me, a little bit in front. Oh, it's Alan Langer. It's Alan Langer. And after the game, the assessor said, Alan Langer was stood in front of you nearly all the game. Why didn't you? It's Alan Langer. I was almost in awe that, yeah. But this is Super League. I know. And then the following time, I think I penalised him about 4 times on the 10. And I almost felt like saying, that's for Bradford the other week, when you didn't get back. Because rugby league referees, we love the game as well. We want to be part of that game. We don't want to be the game, but a lot of people bring us in as if, it's all about you. It's not. It's so not about the referees. The referees sometimes are in awe of these great players because we watch them on telly. We admire their skill set and we want to allow them to do their stuff. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they steal the ball on the quiet without anybody knowing. And we either miss it or pick it up. And then all of a sudden, we're the pantomime villains. No, they're the pantomime villain who stole the ball and then pretended that it was a knock on. And that's the bit that I miss. I'll be honest with you. That's the bit I enjoyed. And I'll never, ever have that physical high from walking off a rugby league field.
Just one on that. That was a great story. Do you think there is subconsciously still that element of the big name players might get away with something? I'm thinking of Sam Tompkins right here because so many people saying Sam Tompkins referees games himself. And I was at Salford when he was on the bench a couple of weeks ago. And when he was on the bench, he was behind one of the touch judges all the time speaking. When he was on the pitch, he was in the referee's ear. Do you think there's anything in that certain players might? Because another one of my sports is snooker, and everyone says Ronnie O'Sullivan gets away with so much more than anyone else. And I don't know if that's a fair question to a referee, but that's something that fans go on about a lot.
No, I learned a very quick lesson. But what you got to bear in mind is because I progressed so quick, it was still a really massive learning curve, and I think at times I got sucked in even more into the theatre and the admiration and the respect of these great players. And it quickly got knocked out of me, and I never did it again because it was a case of, right, I'm at this level because I'm good enough to be at this level. And all right, Alan Langer might be a great, and he's a better scrum half than me, but actually I'm a better referee than him. So I've got to do my job, which will allow him to do his job. And I think it's more about the conspiracy theory that big players put themselves on the games at the right time. So they're going to be involved more. Your bit part players, it's because you don't see them as often, but your big players, they announce themselves on that stage. They announce themselves in the game. So, of course, they're going to be more involved with the referee than I don't mean disrespectfully, than your bit part players, but because they're still part of the jigsaw that needs to be part of a team. But you're always going to get your huge players that just demand the ball and demand the decision. And if the decision goes their way, it's because it's the right decision, not because they've demanded it. But when you see, with respect, you Sam Tompkins with his arms up, chanting away, and he gets the decision because it's the right decision. The perception and the conspiracy is that he's only got it because he's Sam Tompkins. No, he's got it because it's the right decision to give.
As you guide us through some of your great anecdotes from your career, I should probably point out at this point that you've got a book out right now, and I'm sure most of these are in there. So do you want to give that a plug at this point?
I will, yeah.
There we are.
Yeah, sure, anyway, yeah. Look, it's
how did that come about?
Well, you know Paul Cook, don't you? The Hull FC and OKR legend. I was chatting to him on Twitter a year ago, just short of now. And his book was out called Judas, and he signed and sent me a copy. And I went on holiday and I read it, and I loved it. I loved the honesty. I loved the raw emotion. I loved a little bit of the frustration and the anger that was in it. But it was a real good, can't put down read. And when I come back from the holiday, I messaged him and said, Paul, what a great read, loved it. And he said, why don't you write one? I said, who would want to read a book about a former failed rugby league referee? Because that's how I saw myself. I never refereed a grand final or a Challenge Cup final. He said, you'd be amazed. As far as we're aware, no rugby league referee has ever written a book. So he said, why don't you just think about it? And then Mark Chesney, who does a lot with UKR over on the East Coast over there, he contacted me and said he'd really be honoured if he could help me write my book. And I said, well, if I'm going to write one, it's got to be written by me, about me, because with respect, nobody knows me and my stories better than me. So he said, right, we'll get it to about 76,000 words, and then let's take it from there. And there's about 78,000 words in it. So the reason why it's called my final whistle is I refereed Hull FC versus Leeds Rhinos in September 2010. And I sent off Lee Radford for punching Ryan Bailey. And the amount of abuse and I got, I quit refereeing that day. And it's always had that knot in my stomach. And then, so it starts with that game. And then I go back to my early days, how I got into refereeing. There's very little on my personal life, how I got into refereeing, how I became, started refereeing, how I went from being a part-time. What you got to bear in mind is I was 7 years part-time in Super League. So I'd work all week. Everybody connected to that game on the Friday or Saturday or Sunday was full-time except for the referee and obviously the touch judges as well, the video ref. So getting training in the week. How do you do your review when you might not have time, or you might not even get your DVD until Wednesday? How could you sit down with Stuart Cummins or Greg McCallum as a coach when they just didn't have the time? So that's why Stuart really wanted us to become full-time, which we did in December 2006. So part of it is going from being part-time Super League to full-time Super League, and how that dynamic change of the six of us. You know, we'd been in each other's company, but not that often because we all worked. So how would we go in that cauldron together? 6 competitive referees, 6 different characters, 6 different egos, some egos bigger than others, and one thing or another, all wanted those big games. And how would that work? And then the travel. I've travelled to some amazing places around the world, which I chronicle in the book. And then when I started coaching and I video refed, and I was the first person to ever verbalise as a video ref on Premier Sport back in 2012. It was an idea. We're going to not listen to the commentators. We're going to turn the volume down and we're going to listen to the video ref verbalise his thoughts and feelings about that decision. Oh my God, it was a game breaker. And now a lot of other sports now do the same thing. You know, rugby league was incredibly and still is innovative. So things like that. And then when I got made redundant, and then the year between that and State of Mind. So it's not a deep book. I don't talk very much about some of the personal stuff because it's about chronicling how fantastic it is to be a rugby league referee. And I've also do a full chapter on success and failure. What I just said before was, why would anybody want to read a book about a former failed rugby league referee? But then I think about my ambition. I really wanted to referee one Super League game. I ended up doing 272. I'm 7th on the all-time list of appearances for referees. So if I measure success as refereeing, success and failure against refereeing a grand final or Challenge Cup final, then I'm a failure. If I measure my success against Richard Silverwood, Ashley Klein, Phil Bentham, Steve Ganson, Stuart Cummins, then I'm a failure. But if I measure success against Ian Smith's ambitions, then I overachieved 272 times. So the one thing it has been, it's been such a cathartic, emotional, loved it, roller coaster ride. There's actually put a lot of full stops at the end of some chapters. It's given me quite a bit of closure. It's given me a lot of closure on things that I always had that knot in my stomach for. And look, the feedback I've had so far, George, is that it's a really well constructed good, interesting read about the life of a rugby league referee and the opportunities it is to travel. I've travelled to Moscow. I've had 8 days in Moscow. I've been to Lebanon for the weekend refereeing Lebanon versus France, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa twice, 80 odd trips to the south of France. There's a couple of stories in there about south of France. And there's it's, I hope it does well. Like I said, the 50% of the profits go to State of Mind and 50% of the profits go to the local branch of Parkinson's UK. My partner's been diagnosed with Parkinson's, so they're a wonderful support group. So, I really want to try to raise a few bob for them. They're out all the time doing bring and buy sales and car boot sales to raise money to try to find a cure for this, this debilitating illness. So if I can do my bit, George, then that's absolutely fantastic. So, that's that in a nutshell.
Well, good on you, and I'm sure it will do well. And anyone who has been fortunate enough to be in the room for any of your countless State of Mind presentations, Ian, will know what a good orator you are. Just one on the end of your career. I wanted, and you've done a brilliant job. Like you said, you would of selling how fantastic it is to be a referee. Because you're right, there's been a lot of negativity in this series by its very nature of a series to expose what a referees go through. Unfortunately, that was always going to happen, which is why I wanted to end with you, because I knew you'd give it the big sell, the referee salesman, as you are. Just before we spend a couple of minutes wrapping up on a couple of generic points, I want to ask you, for those who've not heard your story, which I don't want you to go, back through in warts and all details, but when I ask you about lowest moments of refereeing, was it that what proved to be your final game at Hull FC? And can you take us into that dressing room at Hull FC after that game, and tell us what happened?
Yeah, look, I sent off Lee Radford for punching Ryan Bailey, and it turned out to be the last ever big decision. Really, I think it was as I was coming off the pitch, look around the stands, and there was quite a bit of tea and coffee and one or two things that were aimed at me, and I just looked up and I just saw the hatred. And then I sat in the changing room and players were passing and banging on my door. I think fans or dignitaries or people were banging on the door, effing and blinding. And I just sat in that moment. And it was a perfect storm, really. I just seemed, everything just seemed to come in. And at that moment, for the first time in my life, and the one and only time in my life, thought, I don't want to do this anymore. And then Stuart offered me an opportunity to, and I took it. Wrong time, a horrendous decision. But you only need to be in that moment for that one time to make the wrong choice about a career, whatever it is, and it ultimately turned out to be, well, say the wrong decision. Life's tapestry is a wonderful thing. Maybe I won't be doing what I do now with you and the other guys from State of Mind. Maybe I wouldn't have had enough to write a book, and it might have only been 15 pages deep. Maybe I wouldn't feel that I've come full circle, and I'm this well-rounded, mentally strong, amiable, decent, I like to think, bloke that you see in front of you now. So, sometimes what don't kill you makes you stronger. And, I got my first girlfriend pregnant and married her. At the time, it was horrendous, but I've got the most beautiful 37-year-old daughter and 2 grandsons that, God, made me cry just thinking about them. So, sometimes celebrate successes and don't beat yourself up if things don't always go to plan. Being a rugby league referee was one of the best things, certainly the best thing I've ever done professionally. I loved it, absolutely loved it. Warts and all, abuse and all. It just took that one moment for me to decide that it wasn't enough.
That's an absolutely fantastic answer. I feel what you're saying so much. You can look back at stuff that's happened, and you've clearly stewed on it a lot, and in very different ways. You've heard me talk about my journey and my story, and in state of mind presentations, which is not something I've done publicly yet. Yeah, maybe that's the next book. I don't know, but I when I torture myself mentally about what I've gone through the last few years, I always end at the point of it's made me the person I am now. And the rounded individual, I love who I am now. I never think I was a bad person, but what I've been through, it's allowed me to get this kind of evolution of character, in that, you know, I get things a lot more. I'm a lot more present for people, you know, that kind of, you see the positive characteristics that you have, which I think if certain things don't happen in your life, maybe you're still just stuck in that rut with your head in your sand, going about things in the same way. So yeah, that really struck home when you said that. Now I'm conscious that yet again, every episode has just flown by and we're running out of time. I want to hear a bit about your current role with the referees. What exactly are you doing now? You don't have to go into too much detail, but I'm interested in what you're doing.
But yeah, go into as much detail as you want. When Phil Bentham, I've been close to Phil for 20 years plus. And we always spoke a lot when he got the job with Premier League, PGMOL, spoke a lot. And then when he went for the head of referees job, rugby league referees job, we spoke a lot. And when he got it, I knew he'd asked me to go on board with him. But you know how Jimmy Gittins, you know, I can't leave the charity, and I certainly can't leave Jimmy. You know, I love what I do for the charity. I love what I do with him. The most inspirational bloke I've ever met. And but I can't. So Phil just said, look, I know you won't come back in more of a longer capacity, but could you come back as a consultant? Just give me one Super League game a week. Just review one referee a week. So I'll be told which referee I'm reviewing that weekend. Like this tonight, it's Chris Kendall. I know this will obviously go out after, but on the Wigan Salford. So I've spoke with Chris at length earlier on today. I'll watch the game from home. I'll make notes. The game will come on Opta, and we'll break it down, and I'll do a little reel of about 10, 15, might even be 20 clips. And we'll meet up via Teams. We'll discuss the rights and wrongs and the positional play. What could he have done differently? What did he do well? Again, very much about promoting all the thousands of great judgments we make. You know, he doesn't need me to tell him that he's missed a knock on, because I can assure you, if he misses a knock on, he will beat himself up.
Yeah. So
it's just about, you know, the one thing I've really been pleased about, George, is the respect that, especially, well, all of them, but especially the young lads, the young Super League referees have for me going back. They're really attentive. They listen to what I have to say. And like I said, I was by no means the best by a long way. But you don't stay in Super League for 12 years and become seventh on the all-time appearance list if you've not got something about you. And they listen. And if I can improve them by 1% as we go week by week, then who knows, all them 1%ers put together can create better referees and create a culture where all the referees improve on block.
A quick final point before we run out of time. Do you think we'll ever change the perception of referees? We've hopefully had a little go at it, but in terms of changing perception and reducing abuse, do you think it's a battle we can't really win, and we're probably kind of stuck with it? Or do you think there will be mindsets changed, albeit a slow journey?
Yeah, it's a slow journey. We have to hope, because if we don't, what's the point? What's the point in all these? If we're not trying to break down stigmas, if we're not trying to educate people that behind the uniform there's somebody that laughs, cries, bleeds and screams, what's the point? We might as well all just shut up shop and allow people to just verbally abuse everybody who puts a uniform on. So we have to try and change minds. We have to try and change cultures. We have to try and change environments that says that by all means be a passionate rugby league fan. There's a difference between being passionate and abusive. And there's so many people that I meet on social media, I meet in street, I meet at games, I meet at gigs that are changing. There's so many people that said, you know something, I used to bawl and shout at referees, but I don't anymore. So that's one. And then that one might become two, might become four, might become, and all of a sudden that nucleus that goes out and out and out, that ripple effect, who knows? Yeah, maybe I'm being naive, but otherwise, what's the point? What's the point in trying to educate people about abuse if we're just going to do nothing about it? So, on behalf of the referee department, what you've done over these podcasts, George, has been fantastic. Like I said, a lot of people have listened, and even if it's only one person that decides not to use a referee, then your job has been really well worthwhile. And like I say, on behalf of the referees, thank you for everything you've done with us.
My next battle, I think, is changing the way I play football on a Sunday morning and thinking about how I go on off the referees. I think that would need an entirely different series. But there we are. Thanks for that, mate. And it's been great. It's been great chatting. You've been a great guest. I knew you would be. And good luck with the book as well.
Cheers, thank you. Can I just quickly plug it? Because it's not in Waterstones. It's not on Amazon because of the commission.
Very quickly, go on.
But it's on my social medias. So go on my social medias. There's a link to pay. Thanks, George.
Lovely. Thank you, Ian. And thank you for listening to State of Mind Talks.